Welcome to chat number 17 of What Does Nature Mean to You? If it's the first time you've watched, maybe you think, well, what were the other 16? So I've been inviting various people, voices, people from all sorts of different backgrounds, connections, and asking them what does nature mean to them, with three key questions that I've been asking, pretty much the same, of each person. So if you hop on to my Instagram IGTV channel, then you will see all the other people that I've spoken to so far. And tonight is no exception. We have the local chef, John Lawson, joining to here in Essex. But we'll get him to introduce himself and tell us more about him. So hopefully he's just joining now. Hello! Oh, you're in the dark. There we go. Yes, just about. Oh, no worries. You're a little bit quiet as well. No worries.
How's that better?
Oh, much better. Hello,
Yeah, I'm having a
thank
problem.
you.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Sorry, you were saying you're having a problem.
Yeah, I have problems with my my actual sound in my phone. So, but yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect this side. Just shout if you can't hear me and I'll try and mime or something.
No, it's all good. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. Yeah, how have you been going?
Yeah, no, I'm really good. Loving lockdown 2.0.
Is that genuinely you are loving it or?
Yeah, I enjoy the peace and the quiet actually. Yeah, it's really nice.
I've been seeing you've posted a few things about cold water swimming and things like that, which I'm sure we'll end up discussing. So
Mm.
you're embracing the peace and the space.
Yeah, loving it, loving it.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it's I certainly have felt the same, and especially lockdown one, I felt that. Um, and at the same time aware, of course, that it has a whole lot of meanings for other people as well,
Mm.
but being in a position where I can embrace that space has been quite important, I think.
Yeah, I think if you can and you're in a situation like a mental situation to be able to embrace it, right? Depends on where you're at, um, in your life and how you kind of attached to the virus or not attached to the virus.
Yeah, absolutely, and what other stresses and strains are present or not.
Mm.
um, but we've gone straight in there, John. I should ask you to introduce yourself to people. I've said you're a local chef, but there's more to it than that. So yeah, if you could just let people know a bit more about who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
Yeah, so thank you, Ruth, for having me on this evening. So yeah, no, so I'm a chef. I've got a restaurant in Leon Sea. It's called Food by John Lawson. And I guess my journey started about 20 years ago, cooking, just over 20 years ago now, where studying in London, Westminster College. And then I began on a journey to travel. I went to Oxford and I worked for Raymond Blanc for 3 years, La Main Quatre Saisons. And then I went to America for 4 years and started my journey working for Gordon Ramsay. Which was exciting. Opened a hotel there in central Manhattan, and then came back home for a little bit. Went to Australia. Had an opportunity to work and open a big project out there for Gordon, which was Maze and Maze Grill in Melbourne. Ended up staying out there. I stayed out there all up about, well, it was just over 7 years it was total. I had my own restaurant, which was called Number 8 by John Lawson in Melbourne. My last 2 years there. In the last year I was there, though, I became very sick. I had a brain tumor, and I had a weight craniotomy, so a resection. The tumor was quite it was cancerous. So it was a cancerous malignus, not benign. It was malignant, so it was cancerous. But it was quite easy in terms of resecting the tumour. So I had a good prognosis, but it wasn't the actual tumour was the issue. It was actually the biopsy, which caused a lot of brain damage, caused severe bleeding on my brain. They hit a nerve in my brain while doing the operation. So basically, brain damage for about 2-3 months. No talking, no memory. It was a tough time for myself and my family. But yeah, I'm very lucky. I gradually became, over time, the swelling went down. I gradually became more and more able to be receptive to memory, be receptive to just the environment that I was in, really, just like in a hospital room, and started doing different kind of exercises, therapeutic exercises, and began my rehabilitation. But a long journey to recovery. So basically that kind of, so that was about 8 months after that. So I went back to work and I went back into my restaurant, and I looked at it, something that I'd created, a restaurant which had a chef's hat, which is equivalent to a Michelin star out there. It was very, very sort of high end. It was in the casino. It was, it was a popular place to be. I looked at it and I thought, this isn't what I want anymore. It was quite a profound turnaround, quite a profound change in me that, I think when you go through something like that, there's big changes that take place. And it was, I had to leave. I had to do something else. There was an urge for me to go and leave. There was obviously a reason why I had this brain tumor, and, no one could say exactly what happened and why it is, but through later on, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, I kind of realised there was the reason why it happened, and very much to do with lifestyle. So yeah, I knew I needed to do my own thing, and that was to open my own restaurant. This was my own restaurant, but it wasn't financially my own. I never had full control. I was dictated to by a large corporation, and it became a big struggle, it was very difficult for me to put what I really want to do in there. So I decided to come back to the UK and do something. I needed some space. I needed some. I needed to come back. It's like I needed to come back home, but not just physically home, but home to myself. I needed to find who I was. And again, it was just a feeling that I had. I needed to remove myself from there. I needed some space. And it wasn't until I got back that I started to realise actually why I needed to come back. Weird, but it was like that. So yeah, and then I came back to the UK. Within 8 months of being back here, unplanned, never planned to be opening a restaurant. Within 8 months, it opened. It was born out of the fact, why is it called Food by John Lawson? I guess because I wanted to create something that was just very real food. I didn't know what else to call it other than food. I wanted it to be as simple as that. It is as real as that. It is raw. It is natural. It is seasonal. It is untouched almost. When we can get forage food, we get forage foods, lots of plants, and it's evolved. It's been open now 3.5 years, and we're just constantly evolving with it. It's great, and I'm not the one also influencing it. So, my head chef Liam is now adding his sort of his touches to it as well. So it's wonderful. So yeah, that's pretty much it in the short context.
Thank you for that introduction and the insight into your personal journey. I mean, when I had first met you, you were doing a talk at the Yoga Factory and telling this story perhaps in more depth, and there was a Q&A and everything, and there was a lot that made me think about that and that path, and some things that personally resonated for me too in that. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you. I mean, doing this series, this thing that seems to be growing, of collecting all these different voices from different, work and connection. But it struck me from what I know of you and the work that you do, that your connection to nature might be different to how I connect to nature necessarily, but it seems to be quite a strong one and connected to food and seasonality of food and things like that. So I wondered if I could go straight into some sort of I've got my 3 set questions I've kind of been sticking to, although we've got room to maneuver around them. But that first question, I'm kind of going back before all of that, perhaps, with what is your earliest memory of connecting to nature in some way?
Good question. Well, I lived in quite I grew up in Essex. I grew up in a small town in Essex, and nature, I guess my first kind of understanding of nature was memory was walking through woods, walking into the woods, going to the beach, and not too much. Almost as a kid, there was a bit of nature, and it was there, and going on holiday and stuff like that. But I never really connected with it that much. It wasn't. I was never that conscious. I wasn't really connected to it. I don't know whether that was because. I don't know why it was. I never was compared to what I am now. I didn't feel any connection to it. It was just there. Like, it was just a bit like, I loved going to the beach. I loved, going for the walks, but, I was too interested in kicking a football around. I was not really like, I didn't look at it like I look at it now. So yeah, it didn't really mean a lot to me, to be honest with you.
And what do you think? Well, no, the sort of the next question is, what does nature mean to you? So I guess that kind of feeds it didn't mean then what it means to you now. So what does it mean to you, and what do you think was the turnaround? And I imagine that's connected with some of your story that you told us. But
yeah, I guess it only really started when I started cooking. When I started, touching food, then I began to start thinking about nature. So when I was studying in London, I started to really learn about food, and I started to look at a vegetable, say. These are vegetables, I grew up in an honest working family and ate very healthily and had, your standard kind of food, like there wasn't anything like kind of, it was very, very standard, healthy, in those days, 20 odd years ago. So when I started working in Michelin star restaurants, I became very kind of curious about these different types of vegetables. Oh, I haven't seen that before. What is that? And then started to ask the question, how is that grown? And then my kind of understanding with nature began because when I worked at La Maman Cat Saison, where they grew everything, we were going out picking our own herbs and vegetables for service, and I never knew how things were grown. I never, and everything we used to grow there. It was an incredible learning curve, not just cookery, but actually in touch with the physical fruit, fruits of the labour. We had to be very, very mindful of how we cut the herbs so they grew back. We had to be, very careful with how we sort of, and they even showed us and told us how to pick the vegetables in the right way because of certain things. If we don't cut them off there, if we don't pull them out of the ground that way, they won't regrow back, and they won't. So I became, after doing things wrong, I became to learn. I learned this very quickly, and I think that was really the beginning of my interest in food in that way, but in nature, in a real like a real curious young lad, you know, like very curious about nature, but more so with the food, and just kind of like back then as well, there was like, I was working in a 2-star Michelin kitchen. There was a lot of fear going through me of like getting things right and stuff, you know. So it wasn't tough times, but that's when it started, I guess. And from then, there wasn't really a big shift until after I got sick. I start, you know, as you get older, you start to appreciate nature a little bit more, and you start to see it, like, you know, people say, you know, will say things, oh, you know, how beautiful the sky, or all these kind of things, like, yeah, oh, it's lovely, yeah. But it never really resonated until I had this awakening after my sickness. And I really, that after that adversity, there was really a pull. And now I need it. I need it for many, many things. I need to be connected to it. I live by the sea now. But as you said before, like, I'm going in there every morning, and it's like, there's just an incredible feeling of connection when I'm there with the sea and going into the sea. It gives me so much energy for the rest of the day. You know, and it's really, there's a real connection between us and nature, and I never gave it much thought, and I think that it's just a wonderful thing. It's just such a wonderful thing, and obviously, like with my menu is all about that. It's all about what nature gives, and yeah, I think it's just a constant giver.
Yeah, I think I remember, although it was a couple of years ago, during that talk that I came to, there was a moment you talked about when you just, I think, stepped out of the hospital, whether you were taking a walk or whether you were leaving, I can't remember, and there was something about, and I've probably changed that memory from my own understanding, but there was something about you suddenly appreciating whether it was trees or there was a view, or there's something about stepping outside, and that really stuck with me.
Yeah, this was a very good point. This was my first, when I basically, I'm just trying to retrace my steps. When I was allowed out of the hospital, or there was a certain time, when I was allowed to walk out. So I was confined to my hospital bed for, you know, weeks. Wasn't allowed out because of my disability. So when I was allowed to walk, there was a park right opposite the hospital, and I was with my family and friends at the time, and we walked right out, and I just remember just like the beauty of it, like the trees, the simplicity of the tree and the park. It was a standard beautiful park, and walking around that was just like, and I'll never forget that, and I still have that feeling now just walking out of the house. There's always an air of freedom, and it's a freedom we take for granted. It's a freedom we take for granted, just walking out of the house or out of anywhere and just being out. And I still get it. I get the same feeling walking out my house, walking out the restaurant, walking out. I just going for a little walk, and it's just, I've taken it for granted. So, yeah, it's just, I feel like my connection's getting stronger and stronger with it the more I connect as well.
Yeah, it seems that it's, when people maybe ask how or what or why, and later on we'll ask, you know, if you've got advice for people, but it seems that there are some things we can do that enable us to practice that connection and build it and grow it. But it does also seem to be, from some of these conversations too, that sometimes we have to get to some sort of crisis point in order to reconnect. And, you know, not that we wish anyone to be going through, you know, these different crises, these different challenges, these different shocks, or, you know, health, but those moments sometimes can then turn us towards a greater connection with perhaps what is more important, or more healthy, or going to serve us better as we move forward. And I guess that's again what struck me a little bit with your story, as now, you know, you talked a bit about your menu and the food and that connection. it seems to be that that's now really really important to you, as what you're eating, what people are eating, and sort of and promoting that as a health part. And I think you're training, aren't you, as a health coach as well, but also talking about the, you know, foraging and what food comes from where and when. And I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about that and that journey and that approach.
Yeah, I guess, Ruth. So when I started the restaurant, I knew, like, in terms of menu wise, there is no menu. So straight away, we're working with the seasons, and it's a wonderful concept for a creative chef. But I guess the underlining reason why I did it was to keep my brain active, because we're constantly having to, like, change the menu, think of new ideas. We never do the same dish twice. So it's very creative. So when we're looking at our food and when we're looking at nature and when we restrict ourselves so much to seasonality, only what's in season, always changing, we need nature to provide. So we're at the mercy of nature. So the different farms that we use, the foraging, you know, different people that come in and drop things off. We need providers from nature, whether it is us going to get that or people bringing it in. So it really is key to what we're doing. What is nature provides, whether it's the local fisherman, the local meat farm, vegetable, whatever it is. So that's why it's the backbone of it. So over the 3.5 years, we've just built up different people that we can rely on, people that are small producers locally that are really doing some special things that can add to our offering. So with that in mind, and then looking into the nutrition of the food and organically grown. I mean, should we touch on that? Yeah, so I've learned so much about soil regeneration, the right soil and growing the right foods, and how that is so beneficial to our health, longevity of our health, rather than commercially mass-produced vegetables or farmed fish, for instance, farmed meat. So all of those things you'll never see in the restaurant, but there's some dairy, but small batch grass-fed dairy, small elements of that British stuff we'll bring in. So it's very, very, it's an educated approach to the menu with Nate. Like, we're really in tune with it. So, like, always a bit of research going on in what we're doing, and the benefits of, so when we're cooking the food as well, is we're slow cooking, we're fermenting, so we use it and we're respecting the ingredients, we're respecting nature, we're respecting what is being given to us from the very start, and no waste. We no waste in food. It doesn't happen there. So the menu, the concept lends itself well to that. I think restaurants that have these big menus may struggle with this, because there's a lot. I mean, I've worked in them all my whole life. Lots of food waste. It's very, very difficult to be sustainable like that as well. To be having these large menus and have to, maybe change your menu 3 or 4 times a year, and you tend to use vegetables when they're out of season that way, because you don't want to reprint the menus, or, you don't want to have too many changes. These things tend to happen. But when you don't have a menu and you can change as and when you want, that means when something comes in the door, you can use it. It's a lovely way to cook. It's tricky, it's not always easy, but you've just got to have the right kind of mentality and the right people in place and the right energy in there, and it's just a lovely concept. It's a wonderful relationship with nature.
Well, definitely that sort of about that brings in that respect. So talking about working with the seasons, working with nature providing, so you can't help but then respect it as to what
Mm.
comes and what goes, and working with it as opposed to trying to be a master of it. And that's the thing that's come up in some of these chats again from different angles, but the fact that we are part of nature rather than masters of it, um, and trying to work with it and have that sort of reciprocal relationship, and only taking as much as you need, and that strikes me as that kind of has to happen in your approach, because otherwise you can't do what you do. um, so I'm guessing then that's really deepening your connection with nature even more so.
Mm. Yes, as I said, it's that's why it's constantly giving, right? Constantly giving, constantly. We have to respect. We have to. The business depends on it. It depends on that respect, and it's yeah. It, it's just we're not asking for any more. We're not asking for something like, if we reverse it, we're not asking for this um, large quantity of farmed salmon that's ever constantly coming in, or this constant batch of out of season tomatoes, or this, we're not asking for that one. When they're done, no problem. We'll go on to the next thing, and it's just constantly, we're just constantly going through the seasons. It's a lovely thing to be constantly involved in, going, changing the whole circle of life, like the whole circle of life. And it's always moving, it's always changing, because we're having a different, never the same dish. New ideas, creativity is a massive part of it, So, it's not an easy job to do. I'm very lucky. I've got a very talented head chef, because there's not many people that could rise to the challenge, if you like. You can imagine it's quite tricky.
Well, yeah, I was thinking as you're speaking, in some ways, I imagine that's how we originally worked with the land and our food, and just what was in season, and before it was on tap in plastic packaging en masse in the supermarket from all around the world. Um, but at the same time, that would have just been us feeding our family, and it wouldn't have been in a chef
Yeah.
restaurant environment. So yeah, having to have that creativity, and yet at the same time, I imagine that creativity is nourishing, as you said earlier. It's keeping your brain nourished and engaged,
Mm.
and as the rest of your staff and head chef as well. So again, that's ultimately, I would say, good for well-being as well.
Yeah, it's. I believe so. I believe it's good for everyone's well-being. There's nothing worse in an establishment if things become static and things become boring. In a restaurant, it's constantly invigorating, constantly challenging, and that's what nature does. Nature is always changing. It's never the same. No 2 days are the same. And that's what I love about it. We are so connected to it, that there's no other what there's no we could not be connected to it any more than we are.
I've just seen a question pop up. Is there a favourite local ingredient that you do go back to?
A local ingredient. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, we used obviously seasonal ingredients. We don't, when I'm talking about dishes, we don't ever do the same dish twice, right? But in terms of ingredients, of course we do. So like, I love tomatoes. To be honest with you, I love the whole concept of going through the seasons. I love mushrooms, like right now, mushrooms and truffle. We've got, they'll be on the menu when we reopen next week. Brussels sprouts are coming in. We're going into winter now, and I love winter because it's like hearty, comfort. Local game. We've got some pheasant going on the menu. So people ask me this a lot, like, what's your favourite ingredient? There is not one favourite ingredient. It's just how it is. It's the change and the evolution of nature. That's what I love, and what it gives. I love cauliflower. I love Obviously, there's a few highlights, but I love everything. You know, I love everything what it gives, and we try and always incorporate all different vegetables and types of things into the menu. So a good selection, yeah.
And I know you talked about living by the sea. In the area that we're in, we have a wonderful connection to the sea. You've done a bit of foraging down by the sea, have you, and used some of the local ingredients from down there as well?
Yeah, so we tend to go and get some like sea beans, sea samphire, um, sea cow, kelp, like seaweeds. Really trying to like broaden, like learn more and more about that kind of thing as well. Again, to help, like just to constantly grow and learn. Like I think it's always good to be doing that through life. And yeah, just I love like just going out into nature. I love going like doing mushroom walks, and I just feel like it's my happy place now. I just go and wander, and I go wander through a forest, and if I find some like it's just like love, like so good. And we're just working with a local guy. Actually, he's starting to work with us in the restaurant, which is a great addition. And he's a forager, a local forager. So yeah, he's got quite a bit of knowledge. So we're really excited to be able to work with him, and he can then add like another layer of yeah, natural food to the menu. Yeah, so
Amazing.
exciting.
I keep seeing some more questions coming up, and people saying thank you as well. John, do you find food is simpler and tastes better using it in season and not doing too much to it?
Yeah, I love that question. Yes, it's one thing I wanted to state really. Like what we do in the restaurant, although it's quite chefy, it kind of has to be a little bit chefy. We do try to keep the element of the vegetable or the main ingredient as simple and as clean as it is. We start doing too many things with things, too much processing really. If you think about how food is processed, it's another form of processing. So you know, like just say instance of cauliflower, roasted cauliflower, really well, you know, a little bit of puree, like, you know, what else do you need? You know, if it's done really well, you know, the good old sort of tomato salad, you know, ripe, proper good tomato salad, a little bit of olive oil, salt, like there's nothing else you need. So there is a balance though in because it's a high-end restaurant, we can't do things too simple, like people are paying, you know, a good amount of money. So we do need to add, you know, a few little touches to it, but it always we don't do anything that shouldn't be there. Like it always has to make sense. You know, 4 or 5 ingredients to a plate, but it's very, very simply executed. And yeah, it's just how I love to eat anyway as well. And you know, same with Liam, like we both love that kind of simplicity, but we have to be very careful with ourselves. We both have to constantly remind ourselves, does it need that? Do we need that? Can we just take that off? Is that enough? You know, these are the sort of questions you have to ask yourself. Yeah.
It strikes me then as when you're having foods in that more simple way and that fresh and seasonal way, then that connection again to where it's come from and what that actual food is, as opposed to when it's processed and packaged and doesn't even resemble whatever came out the ground, if it even came out the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is doing justice to that vegetable, to the farmer that's grown it, and being respectful for that we are highlighting what they've grown. And I think it's really important. It's our responsibility actually to make sure that the journey of that the journey of that energy, that vegetable is finished off, you know, and done, you know, and you know, there's so much work goes into growing, you know, into farming. It's crazy. Like there's so much work that goes into it. So it's really our responsibility to make sure that we're respecting it and not just not just kind of unconsciously going through the motion of like cooking. You know, like actually like feel it when we're cooking. Actually, you know, our intention is there. We're present when we're cooking, and the right intention for each dish is there. So which is always a constant thing that we need to be reminding ourselves of. Yeah.
Yeah, and even in the eating of it, it reminds me of some mindfulness practices where, you know, you intentionally spend some time paying attention to the food and looking at it and smelling it and noticing it. And as you're eating it, also considering where has this food come from and taking some
Mm.
time to be thankful for that and really consider that and all the different people that were involved in that journey of the food to get to your plate. And with that can creates perhaps calm and space within our own minds to slow us down and then process things that we need to be processing, but equally building up that respect again for that food and where it's come from and the people or the farmer, the chefs, and connecting all those dots so that I guess it's moving away from our potentially throwaway culture or our instant culture where we can just grab anything we want anytime and not really consider all those factors really.
Mm.
Um, so it strikes me as it comes back to connection and connecting the dots as well, I think.
Yeah. I think it's something we've forgotten about. This, this culture we're in now, where we've got everything so quick and easy and fast, and we're forgetting about the most simplest important things to us. Eating the right food, as you said, slowly, chewing, consciously, thanking where the food has come from, taking time, and and that goes back to, there's a little bit there that goes back to me from my family. We always used to eat down together, at the dinner table, and my dad was big on, like, we don't talk at the dinner table, we eat our food. And it's quite interesting, always used to just like, oh, why are we being like that? Like, why do we have to, but now I understand it. And like, when I eat my food at home, I always eat in silence now. And I take my time, I chew my food properly, and it's just a lovely experience. And as soon as I have any background music on or there's any noise, it really irritates me. And it's this, I guess it kind of, it's being present. It's being present with the food. I think that's what it is, you know.
Mm.
And it's just, you spend time, it's just going back to what we just said, is spend time cooking it and growing it, and then what? We're just going to chuck it down ourselves, you know. So it's being completely mindful about what you're doing in that present moment.
Mm. And does this contrast to how you used to live, work, in that you referred a little bit earlier about your journey and considering perhaps reasons maybe why what happened and why you had the brain tumor and dealt with that, and I wondered whether you were referring to, should you might talk about it, the pace of life then versus pace of life now, because certainly the little knowledge I've had of chefs, is, as you said, quite normally high paced, stressful environment, and most probably grabbing bits of food on the go and probably rarely sitting down in peace and silence to eat calmly.
Yeah. How crazy is that? What a paradox. It's exactly that, Ruth. Like my all in my 20s really, working in starting in Oxford and then going to New York City, then in Melbourne, working hard, playing hard, out all night, back in work the next morning, just putting things in my mouth just for food, like just no conscious effort in terms of what it's doing to my body, like, and you most of the days you wouldn't eat all day, and then you finish late at work, late at night, and then you would eat before you go to bed, and then it's completely, and this is the norm for a lot of chefs at that level. It's just the environment. There's not enough time. You're in the kitchen. You've got lots of work to do. It's very, very stressful, and you're buzzing off that stress. This is something I loved. I love to do it, and I would never change that now. But it's an incredible turnaround. it's an incredible turnaround. How sometimes I think like, God, I can't believe that I used to do that. I can believe I used to do that, but it's just how the shift has happened, how that shift in me has completely changed my mindset in terms of how I want to be now. And mainly through that adversity, that almost never knew that I was going to get out of it. Adversity, like, am I going to survive this? And when you face that, there's a shift that just happens without you knowing inside, and that's what it is, really.
Yeah, you used the word a little bit later that now you need nature, and it goes from I should go for long walks, or I should eat food slowly, or it moves perhaps into a need and a knowing and a need, I think.
Yeah, and I think you were talking about before, like in terms of adversity and going through what I went through, and you're right. I think to have any kind of major shift in your life in terms of shifting to what is to nature, to what is really true to life, if you like, there needs to be that adversity, and it can never happen if you're in the comfort zone. If you're just sitting there and everyone, you're very comfortable with life and you're really happy, there needs to be something. It doesn't have to be as impactful as mine, but there needs to be something to wake you up, to turn that around. And it can happen fast, it can happen slow, it happens very different for everybody. So it's it's quite interesting that, like, a lot of people it doesn't resonate to, and that's just how it is. But it's interesting that adversity, that that we have to go through that to find who we really are. Yeah.
Yeah, I was asked that when I was chatting, when the tables were turned and I was answering some questions, and someone asked me, do you think everyone has to go through something in order to find that change? And I really struggled to answer it, because I don't want to wish anyone to go through anything, and at the same time it does feel kind of like, yes, but you're right, it doesn't have to, that adversity or that crisis or that point of forcing you to change, or at least look perhaps differently at the patterns of behavior or the place so far. It doesn't have to be huge, it doesn't have to be big. It can be something, well, that feels big enough for you to change, but it's not saying that anyone has to go through anything horrendous either. But I have kind of come to that conclusion that, as you say, there's something that needs to wake us up, whatever that might be, for us to kind of look at our adapted behaviors and go, well, maybe I need to, or I would like to change those, and start to for me, it was suddenly realizing what was important, and all the other things just kind of dropped away, and there was no question of that anymore. And yeah, what would your advice be then to people? I mean, that's my third question of this series, and that's normally perhaps in the context of connecting to nature. What would your advice be? And perhaps as we move into winter, but I think you can kind of take that question however you wish and give whatever advice you would wish in whatever context.
So what would my advice be to get people back in nature?
Perhaps, yes, but to get people to nature, to connect to nature, and to reconnect to themselves, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about food, for instance, start being very conscious about your food choices. I think it's really important. So this is more important. Well, it's important for many reasons, not just your health and well-being, which is vitally important, but for the planet, if we're going to recover. So think about responsibility, sustainability, using local regenerative. If you're gonna eat meat, regenerative farming, and I think it's a necessity now. This needs to happen. So in terms of that part of nature with food, you can definitely start there. In terms of general sort of nature, and if you're wanting to kind of get a bit more peace and quiet and get back in touch with nature, I think, if you live by the sea, then go, spend more time there. Go cold water swimming if you can deal with it. Go for walks in the forest, in the woods, and just be present. If you can, sit there, listen to the birds, the senses. Be present, and just be in touch with your surroundings, and if you do that over time, you'll gradually understand the beauty of what is there, and what is there within you as well, and you'll find that connection. And that's what I did. And it's slow, it's just great, it's just subtle, always little subtle shifts and changes, and you start enjoying being there. Just simple, like just sitting there. It sounds really weird, but and realizing there is no separation. There is. So for sure that, and just appreciating everything, just looking outside your window maybe, and appreciating the simplest things there is. Taking time just for that.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much, John, for taking the time and for sharing your story, your approach, and what you do. Before we go, can you just let people know a bit more again about how to follow what you do, what you're doing at the restaurant, obviously, particularly in these times, or how people can get in touch?
Yeah, so you can follow me personally, Chef John Lawson, on Instagram. So yeah, basically, personally, I'm sort of focused around food for healing purposes, and I'm studying to be a health coach where I can help more people. Found that's been quite an area where people sort of come to me and ask for help, but I never knew how to sort of coach people, so I'm learning that aspect. And my restaurant, Food by John Lawson. So we reopen next week. It's in Leigh-on-Sea. Check us out online, Instagram. It's all there. And just connect up.
Lovely. Just seen another comment saying, such an inspirational guy. What a great conversation. All the very best to you. And that's from John.
That's lovely.
Green. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Lovely.
Thank you. You
Take
too.
care.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Yeah, big thank you to John, and thank you for everyone's comments as well. Sorry if I didn't get to everyone. So tomorrow will be conversation number 18, and I'll be joined by an old friend, Mike Thomas, who is a coach and also just written a children's book as well. So looking forward to speaking to him. Thank you everyone for joining us.